North Conference. Welcome to the second session of the Academic Libraries North Conference. Before we get started, I'm just going to run through some housekeeping. If you've got questions during our sessions, please add them in the Q&A next to the chat box. We can't take any verbal questions, but those questions will be answered at the end of our speakers' sessions. The whole of this session is being recorded. If you want to turn captions on, you can turn them on yourselves by clicking the CC button at the bottom of the stream window. Please, we ask all delegates to abide by the Code of Conduct, which you can find either on the delegate brochure, on the ALN website, or also from the announcements within Heale. We've got, first of all, 2 lightning talks, and then after those 2 lightning talks, we'll have the opportunity for questions. So please do, whilst they're speaking, add your questions into the Q&A. And our first lightning talk comes from Angela Duckworth and Fiona Heale from Liverpool University, and their talk is The Library, the Student Union, the Books and Their Lovers.
Yep. Yeah, I will. Let's just. Hi, can everybody see that, the screen?
Yeah, that can be seen fine.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, and you can hear me?
Absolutely, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so my name's Fiona Heale, and myself and Angela Duckworth are both subject librarians at Liverpool University, and we're also members of the promotion and communication group within the library there. And in this lightning talk, we want to briefly outline some of the projects we work with the Student Union to highlight and develop library resources of relevance to a range of national themes, particularly focusing on underrepresented and marginalised voices of society, such as the global majority during Black History Month, the LGBTQ+ community, disability and mental health. Just before we go on to talk about what we did what we've done in the past academic year, if I just set the scene for what we did before lockdown, really, we did have. Sorry, we'll just move on. Lovely. We did do displays pre-pandemic, and we posted photos of displays on social media, but they were a bit dull and they were absolutely done in isolation. So they weren't part of any university-wide program. They weren't very engaging and they weren't very interactive. And then during the pandemic, when of course everything had to be done online, we developed online resources list using our electronic reading list provider, Leganto. And we promoted these via social media channels, the library social media channels, and some other university media channels did retweet, but by and large, it was very much done in isolation of what anything else that was going on in any other parts of the university. So these were the sort of things that we put together reading lists on. And then in summer 2021, Stephanie, the Student Union Vice President for Welfare and Community, contacted us to ask if we'd be interested in collaborating to celebrate October's Black History Month. And we really jumped at this opportunity because we'd never been approached by the Student Union to actually work with them on anything before. So even though there was a bit of uncertainty about what form that would take due to the continued pandemic restrictions, we were very much on board with the Student Union on this. And so in that way, we developed a joint collaboration between the Student Union and also between other interested groups within the student community. And that included things like the Global Majority Committee, African Caribbean Society, and the Student Union very much provided a way for us to these groups that we'd never had before. And it allowed us to work with other groups on other campaigns as well. So this was the start of a year-long collaborative relationship with the Student Union, spurred very much by Stephanie's enthusiasm and verve. The Student Union designed all the flyers, the posters, and they arranged the full university-wide programme of events. So they really did all the hard work. We created displays both in our library at our main campus and also at our library at the creative campus as well. We curated displays there, and we also curated online resources list with links to books, films, broadcast, arts and podcasts. But for the first time, although the library curated the displays and the reading list, we actually had student input, because the Student Union really encouraged students from different societies to actually make suggestions about what they wanted in the displays, and also they made suggestions about the sort of things that they wanted on the resource list. So they suggested an awful lot of podcasts and broadcasts and things that we hadn't really thought of in the past. So here are some of the examples of the campaigns that we were involved in during the course of the year. And then Angela will talk a little bit more about what we did within those campaigns in a minute. So we did Black History Month, and this was a poster that the Student Union came up with that they put on social media, and they had posters throughout the university. And there's a bit about the library, celebration of the library and creative campus displays. And they were running in the library throughout the month, the Black History Months. And I think we changed some of the displays as well. So we might highlight some things one week and other things the next week. We did for LGBTQ+, also Disability History Month. And this is a poster that the Student Union came up with for Disability History Month. And again, we did displays for that. And they also here promoted for the student from the larger student body, not just those involved in societies and the Student Union, to pass on suggestions to us to add to the library collection. And that worked very well. So we were able to really, I think, make our online reading list much more, or resources list, much more geared to the students, what students would be interested in. And I stressed that they weren't academic. We made it very clear that we didn't want these resources lists to be academic. We wanted them to be apart from books that would be on a reading list or resources on a reading list for academic purposes. We did Women's History Month. We did quite a lot for mental health and well-being. This was a university initiative rather than a national initiative. Unfortunately, Stephanie, who's been such an exceptionally good advocate, but sadly her tenure as SUVP is over. We hope to continue the good work that we started with current Student Union VP. We hope to continue that with the future one, and also with societies, to continue the work that to build on the work that we've done with student societies as well. She couldn't be present with us today, unfortunately, but she did send a couple of quotes that we thought we'd share with you. I won't want to read them out, but we'll leave them up there so you can have a look at them. The interesting thing, what we hope to do, is that we hope to build on what we've done with these national campaigns and university campaigns, and actually work with students for other things, other ways we can support students, for instance, those who are neurodiverse or have other learning differences. So we can not just look at how we can work with students on creating campaigns or celebrating events, but also other ways that we can support students as well. And also to try and encourage students to see that the library isn't just there to support their academic studies. It's there for much more than just academic supports. And we want to look at other ways, alternative ways that we can engage with students and what they do in their university life.
Thanks, Fiona. Hope you can hear me too. I'll try to shout a bit louder. My voice isn't as clear. A bit closer. Okay. So the other things, we obviously helped raise awareness of our diverse collections through this, and that was something that we really wanted to do. We'd been started to look into this kind of area, but this really helped us to focus a little bit more. So we were able to put on really good displays to match all of the campaigns that went on with the Students' Union as well. So this one gives an example of our Black History Month display that we put on, of the books mainly. But one thing that we could really do was we could tap into each other's sphere of influence in social media mainly. And this is like an example of one of the stories that the Students' Union put on their Instagram account, and you can see there they've tagged in Liverpool Hope Library. Similarly for the wellbeing one, and similarly we would do the same thing. This is an example of our Twitter account for University Mental Health Day, and we would tag in the Students' Union. So by doing that, we were hoping to really sort of like double our influence of who we were going to reach by sort of tapping into each other's and tagging each other's sphere of influence. So part of this process, as Fiona mentioned, we really wanted to get students involved in recommending purchases as well. So we actually asked for suggestions, and the Students' Union were very good in suggesting books that were current to our theme. So we bought the books by Keith Lamar and Ashley Nugent to match the current theme that we were looking at, Black history and etc. Okay. And then that led to us having a dedicated fund set up where students could purchase or suggest purchases for the library. So we had a few criteria, and diversifying the curriculum was one of those. And again, another kind of stepping stone that led on to us developing further our Reading for Pleasure collection and putting that as much higher profile in the foyer of the library, so it's much more highly visible. And so all of these things kind of interlinked, and they really helped raise our profile of all of the different resources, and also that link with the students as well, making sure that our library wasn't something imposed on the students by us and the academics, but that they had a part of contributing to the collections as well. We did have some positive engagement with the students, often a bit anecdotal really. It was often in what they found when we saw them looking at the displays, they'd make comments. But one really positive aspect of our engagement was in our wishing line, which we did for Mental Health Awareness Day or Week with the Students' Union, and we set up wishing lines where they could put in inspirational thoughts and quotes. So we've got really positive feedback there. You can see some of those on the screen. This is also springboarded to more holistic approach to wider university life, natural links to EDI initiatives as well that the library are doing throughout our sort of normal day-to-day roles as well. We did face some challenges, mainly that social media was one of them. Ironically, Students' Union posted mainly on Instagram and we posted mainly on Twitter. So that's something that we're going to address and hopefully go forward with that. That made it difficult to evaluate the impact as fully as we would have liked to have done. And it is really a pilot year, so it is quite early on, but we hope to sort of be able to evaluate greater impact. And of course, as with a lot of us, there wasn't any budget for this in particular. Yes, we had the special fund for student purchases, but for anything like the wishing line, me and Fiona went out and bought the string and the pegs, etc. ourselves. So I'm sure that's a common theme for a lot of you. So for the future, we are hoping to have this grow with the new Students' Union personnel. We're hoping to use the student advocates a lot more in their groups and societies. We have something called the SALA Award, which is service of leadership, where students volunteer. So we're hopefully going to tap into that resource and help them with the library, use them for the library. And develop more sort of into the future, looking at more of the neurodiverse sort of area as well of the student population too. So I think that's the final slide. We're going to leave questions to the end, I believe. So I'm going to, Sharon, it's already done for us, brilliant.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We'll move on, like you said, to our next lightning talk before we take questions for both talks. So do remember to pop questions that you've got in the Q&A. And our next talk is from Ilka Heale and Dave Curtis from the University of York, who will be talking about bringing the student voice to diversify and decolonise our collections. So over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to quickly share my screen with you and just check that that's all working okay. Is everything, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, great. Okay, so my name is Dave Curtis and I'm part of the Academic Liaison Librarian team at the University of York, along with my colleague Ilka Heale, who is part of Collections. And we're just here to talk today about our York Student Curator project. And just to give you a bit of background, a few years ago, probably much like many people, we started looking at our sort of collections and how we can kind of diversify and decolonize them. And we had a few projects going on, but we really wanted to kind of kickstart things a bit more. So we had a big roundtable discussion where we invited academics and students and any of the support staff in the university to come to the library and join in a discussion about what we could do and what was currently happening across the university. Some of the projects that came out of this was we did a Your Library, Your Voice library guide, which covered sort of areas like Black Lives Matter, LGBTQI, migration and refugee, data equality, various other things. Another thing we did was we created a diversity reading list toolkit for our academics should they wish to kind of change anything on their reading lists or kind of diversify that. But we also started having quite a lot of discussions with departments, predominantly archaeology, but unfortunately a lot of that kind of came to a standstill as we kind of hit the pandemic. One of the kind of more recent projects that's come out of that is our Student Curator project. And so that is kind of what we're talking about today. So I'm going to hand over to Ilka, who's going to carry on with that.
I'm a metadata specialist at the library, working in the content and open research section. So we noticed that other university libraries had started doing similar projects, and we wanted to start something at York. So we contacted the University of Essex initially to find out how they ran it. Got some information about how they recruited the students, how it worked. And basically, one of the reasons we wanted to do this, we wanted to give our students to showcase their passion and their interest in topics around diversification and decolonization matters. The project team was quite small, so there's only 4 of us, 2 from academic liaison and then 2 content and research. We felt that worked quite well, just being 4 of us, we could communicate quite easily. We didn't need big meetings. A lot of the communication, as Dave said, was done due to the pandemic, was done over Zoom, in Slack. And we decided to go down the route of a paid internship. So we contacted our careers department at York. They suggested that they could help us out with this. So what we agreed on was a paid 10-week internship for 10 hours a week. And because of that, we managed to recruit 2 students. We had about 87 applicants, so there was obviously the need for students to want to do this. And it helped with working with careers, because actually they narrowed it down to 15. And then with that shortlist, the 4 of us worked it down to about another 8, and then we interviewed 8 people. And of all those application forms that we've read, every single student had worked in the area before, had an interest. So it was kind of really, really interesting to kind of hear from them. Having gone through the interview process, we've gone to the student curators. And the main strand of the project, well, there's 2 main strands of the project. So one of them was see yourself on the shelf. And we're using this tagline with permission of the University of Kent. We noticed that, and we quite liked the wording of that. So this strand was all about highlighting materials in the library that were to do with diversification and decolonisation. We asked the 2 students to come up with, prior to the interview, we asked the students to come up with ideas of what they wanted to do for their projects. And both our students used these projects. We had a small budget which they could purchase books to add to the collections, and so what we also wanted them to do was to highlight the collections through social media. We did using Magento, we reading lists, and we had library guides, etc. The second strand was diversifying reading lists. This was something that we wanted to look at for a while, didn't really know how to start it really. So the reading lists were audited, looking at authors' backgrounds, so gender, ethnicity, looking at the publisher's geographical location, and also the form and type of material for accessibility purposes. Results were shared with list owners, and what we did was we used 2 reading lists from our medical department, from medical, and we actually used the model from the Manchester Metropolitan Library, which is an Excel spreadsheet, what we to get an overall idea of the diversity of the reading. We did note that students had to basically make general assumptions about gender and ethnicity, etc. And we realized that probably to list from the medical side, medical studies was probably not the best use. It might have been better to use humanities or something. Like I said, we wanted them to, they wrote blogs about it, they promotion themselves, and actually passing back to Dave, showed a couple of guides.
Great, thanks, Ilka. So what I'm going to quickly do is just show you some of the guides that they created. If I just part of that. So on this page, you can actually see the links to the pages themselves, but I'll quickly show you the ones that we have. So the first one that was created was by Kristen Harding, and she was looking more at sort of wanted to showcase work by Africans about Africa. So she put together this list. So you can see we basically gave them free rein, and they had a short section where they wrote about themselves and their interest in the project. They were allowed to put videos up there, and they got to create a reading list and sort of structure that in any way they wanted to, really. So Kristen went towards sort of structuring it around fiction and non-fiction and different types of material, really. And then she also spent some time working with our archives department, who have a South African studies sort of collection, and so she wanted to highlight some of that as well. Cecilia, the other intern, really kind of wanted to do a project around challenging perceptions and being anti-racist. She approached it a lot from the things that she's learned over the past few years. She once again also went for the same format of sort of putting a video on, and her reading was kind of put together more by theme than it was about sort of type of material. So certainly we would want to sort of carry on with this. I think in the next sort of like, go back to the presentation. In the next sort of section, we would really want sort of students to kind of pick up that and sort of work more extensively on that and kind of move more away from the reading list side of things. We felt that it did work quite well. The medical academics were quite happy to sort of see their lists broken down, but there wasn't really much to change, and we kind of felt that that's something that could possibly be done in another area of the library. And we really wanted to kind of focus more on the sort of the students focusing on their lib guides and sort of publicizing what they want to sort of show. Some of the challenges that we did kind of face was that whilst the students were given sort of £500 each, the budget spend was actually quite low. And that shows that they were actually able to find a lot of the material they wanted in our collections, which is great. But it would have been really nice to sort of have more of that money used to add items to our stock. We also wanted a physical display in the library, but that really was not possible due to the circumstances at the time. One of the things that came up that was a real challenge was we didn't get to meet them in person until quite late in the process. So we spent a lot of our time with them via Zoom or using a Slack channel to kind of discuss things with them. And really, I think next time we do this, it would be really good to sort of be able to work with them on site, show them more about the background processes within the library, and actually just sort of see them on a weekly basis in person. And the other thing that we kind of really wanted to kind of do on the next stretch is, instead of having a team of 4 of us sort of speak with them as a group is to sort of take one of them on at a time and sort of do like a mentorship type approach, and sort of help them sort of reach targets over the 10-week periods. As far as the outcomes went, we got very good feedback from the students. They really enjoyed the project. They liked working with us, which is always a bonus. But we've had good feedback about the guides. They've had good sort of footfall, and I think it's really sort of given our students a sort of an opportunity to sort of voice and highlight the things that they're passionate about. And you know, all being well, well, actually I say all being well, but we are going to be running this again, and hopefully we'll be doing it on a yearly basis. That's, I think, all we have to say today. I will just put our contact details on the slides if you want to kind of talk with us or get in touch and learn sort of more about what we did in more depth, and we're happy to kind of like chat with you. So from there, I'm going to stop sharing because I think it'll probably be questions if there are any.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much. And thank you to both sets of lightning talks. We're going to have questions now. If I'm just going to have a little look and see where we were in the chat. So the first question I've got is for Fiona and Angela, our first speakers. And this is for Jennifer Povey, who asks, are you hopeful you can continue this and replicate things? I found it difficult when SU officers change, which is something that you mentioned, and then keeping up momentum. How do you think you will approach this?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we are a little bit concerned about that. But then Stephanie and quite a lot of other of the student union officers from this past year are still around in the university. You know, they've gone back to the courses that they were on. And Stephanie has been very, in her emails to us, she said, you know, please don't hesitate to get in touch if I can help in any other way. So there is a way in through her, but I think we're much more confident now, both Angela and myself, to actually approach the student union and say, this is the sort of thing that we did last year, and we'd be really interested in, you know, being involved with you in any projects that you want to do. So I think we hope to be a lot more proactive this year. I think we're much more confident now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. The next question is for you two as well, from Helen Loughran, who asks, measuring impact is always the tricky thing with these things. How are you planning to do this?
Yeah, it is tricky, which is why I think we kind of skirted away from it in our pilot year. It's always a good excuse. Oh, it's a pilot year, you know. But I think we're going to be looking a lot better at social media, and we're going to kind of have a more joined up approach, because that did really affect us, using one source using Instagram and one source using Twitter. But we've got a new digital marketing person in the library now, and so he's going to be looking at all of our social media and all of the metrics behind that. So that's a great plus for us. Also our student suggestion purchase as well. So obviously we're going to promote that a lot more again, and that'll give us, you know, really good actual hard figures as to how many students do suggest purchases for the library. And we've toyed with the idea of, for our displays, of putting up one of those voting things where you know, a little tub where you can put your counters in for yes, no, do you like our display, or, you know, anything like that kind of a thing, you know. So we're toying with the idea of doing those kind of things too. So anyone's got any good ideas, we'll be interested to hear them too.
Of course, of course. And we've got one final question at the moment. This one's for Ilka and Dave from Ian Baird. A number of companies are advertising ebook collections and bundles for decolonisation / EDI. Has anyone purchased any of these? And how useful are they? Do you have an answer?
Thanks, Ian. I'm not aware that we have bought any of these bundles, to be honest. So I can certainly go back and check and see.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. That's a good answer. And that will draw our questions to a close for this section. Obviously, if anyone does think of any questions whilst other people are talking, do continue to pop them into the Q&A. Now we're going to move on to our short paper presentation, which comes from Sandy Macmillen and Gooch from the University of Essex. Their paper is the University of Essex Decolonising the Library Student Champion Project, and they have some students with them as well, which is great to see. I will hand over to you.
Great, thanks very much. Just hold on a second while I share my screen. So hopefully people can see that okay and hear me okay.
Sandy, it's not in presentation view. We can hear you fine, but we just see it in edit view rather than presentation view.
There we go. How's that?
That's fantastic. Thank
you. Great. Okay. So great. Thanks very much indeed to the team for organising this and inviting us to speak. I'm really delighted on behalf of my colleagues, Cecilia and Daniella, that our friends in the north are welcoming a delegation from the south to hear a bit about the Decolonising the Library student project here at Essex. And briefly, myself and I will provide a short backdrop to the project, and then Cecilia and Daniella will talk in a bit more depth about the project itself, which is essentially student-led and student-run, and obviously be happy to take questions at the end. I think it's fair to say at Essex we've taken largely a pragmatic and practical approach to decolonisation as far as possible, primarily looking at diversifying our collections. And we've done this within the context of the broader education strategy and action plan here at Essex, which explicitly endorses decolonisation. And indeed, the Student Champions project itself is financed by central university funds that we obtained through a successful bid to the Education Strategic Fund. And really, we got involved in decolonisation initiatives for three main reasons, I think. I mean, firstly, Essex has a very diverse student body, both in terms of home and overseas students. So the average for home students is 38% from ethnic minority communities. But as you can see on the slide, a couple of large departments have well in excess of that, for example, law and business. Many of these students come from London, mainly from Black communities in London, some from Asian communities as well. So that's our main kind of recruiting ground, as it were. But also in terms of international students, we have a very large, and historically have had for many decades, a large community of international students. Again, from many different countries, and again, a lot of variation between departments in terms of percentages of overseas students. Secondly, I mean, what we found, of course, is that many of these students want to research on topics, particularly in the humanities and social sciences, that are of relevance or interest to themselves or on their home countries. And they often turn to subject specialists like I myself for help in doing that. And, it became clear that our collections in some areas weren't really adequate to meet their needs or their expectations for researching, broadly kind of decolonial topics. So, this raised questions, really implications for the library collections, reading lists, and also more broadly, subject guides, how we teach, presentations, all that sort of thing. Thirdly, really providing these broader and more diverse collections has resulted in benefits in terms of engaging students and students from ethnic minority backgrounds and overseas students in particular. And as we know, engaged students tend to succeed academically. This helps reduce attainment gaps, a key metric, increases student retention, another key metric, student satisfaction, of course, a kind of holy grail for many university administrators, and ultimately employability. So In many cases, these students return to employment in their home communities, home countries, and contribute hugely to the growth and success of those communities. So for all those reasons, really, the library is fully committed to playing a key role in helping all of our students to succeed.
I'm just now going to provide a bit of background to how we built up to the Student Champion project within the library. Prior to 2020, decolonisation hadn't been really a focus in the library strategy, but as the university began to focus on decolonising the curriculum, it had a natural impact to the library. So for example, a couple of academic staff reached us, so we worked together to set up decolonising the curriculum reading list on Talis, which academic staff across the university can contribute to and also can get inspired to. Following this, the library recognized the real need to work more proactively on embedding principles of equality, diversity, and inclusion into our collection development management, as well as the support we provide. And Sandy and one of our colleagues, Esther, led the priority initiative last year, so 2020 to 2021. And under the initiative, we achieved a few things. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for example, I think there was a question about the collection. We did buy equality, diversity, inclusion collection from ProQuest, and we spent about £40,000. And if you're not familiar with demand-driven acquisition model, it's a purchase model where the whole collection is available through our catalog, but actual purchase will be triggered by user selecting individual titles. We also created a LibGuide to decolonising the curriculum, which was mainly aimed at academic staff, which includes the library resources relating to decolonising the curriculum, as well as links to useful online open access resources and best practice guides for academic staff who may be unsure where to start. We then held an engagement event in June 2021 over Zoom, and we had around 40 attendees, both students and staff. And we gave updates on what we are doing, and we had a discussion about what decolonisation means to them in the context of library collections, and what things are or should be important when we are selecting resources. And we also set aside time for participants to browse ProQuest EDI ebook collection and select some titles for purchase. Next slide, please. So the decolonisation library continues to be one of the library priorities this year, 2021-2022, as you can easily imagine. It's not something we can complete within a year. But this year, we really want the students to be involved. And as I said earlier, our focus last year was mainly helping academic staff to decolonize in their reading list or their curriculum. But students should have voice onto our collection as well. And one of the important aspects, for me at least, is of decolonisation is for marginalized voice to be heard. As Sandy mentioned, did you mention? Oh, you probably didn't mention. We did manage to secure grants from the University Education Strategy Fund to recruit 2 student champions. And when we opened the positions attracted really strong candidates. And I would say one of the strongest candidates pool in my experience, including students recruitment as well as normal staff recruitment. So this was really reassuring to us because students do care about topic and passionate about it. So I'm really pleased to introduce Cecilia and Daniella now this stage, who came at the top of the really strong candidates pool, and they will now report on what they've been doing so far, and they're planning for the remainder of their time with us.
Hello everyone, my name is Cecilia. And I'm Daniella. And generally, the reasons why we chose to get involved in this experience is due to our shared interest in the matter of expanding diverse resources. But for me personally, I was drawn to this position because I believe that a change needed to be had within the course the course resources within my specific modules.
In my studies, I've personally noticed a lack of representation when it comes to authors, playwrights, filmmakers from minority ethnicities in scholarly discussions relating to literature, film, and theatre. So therefore, I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to be able to make a difference.
Next slide, please. In the past 5 months, we have managed to engage with students in different ways. We started this experience off through organizing discussion meetings where students could informally share their concerns on the matter. Our goals were to see whether students showed an interest with these topics, and also we wanted to be able to create a safe space for students to discuss this matter. Although attendance for the different departments varied during the term time, we were still able to observe how passionate students were. And after term time, we noticed an increase in students' attendance and engagement during our more informal game sessions.
Recently, we held a trivia night after exam season, which was one of the most, had the most student engagement of any event in the library this year. And the event was a great improvement in regards to attendees in comparison to events that we held during term time. As displayed in the image above, the recent trivia night was a way for students to kick back and relax with their friends while engaging with the topic of decolonisation in an informal and fun setting. There were many keen attendees who enjoyed competing in teams for a prize and enjoyed sharing their thoughts on the diverse resources that we discussed.
Next slide, please. So examples of the suggestions and points raised by students in the meetings that we've had include students wanting to see more decolonial elements explicitly being introduced during the library's inductions and tour sessions. Students also want the library to hold regular displays of diverse resources that are relevant to the topics of decolonization. Outside of the library, students suggested that departmental inductions should also include ways in which different courses aim to diversify their content and what roles the students will play with that. This suggestion was a response to students addressing issues of tokenism, as well as the lack of diversity demonstrated in certain modules and reading lists.
Another one of the key points raised was that many students felt that there was support that they needed support for researching topics, and it wasn't always available. Furthermore, some were unclear of what the meaning and relevance of decolonization was. And another suggestion was regarding the lack of diverse text for leisure reading, and that by improving this in the library, it would help our diverse student body to feel more at home. Lastly, we were giving the suggestion that we should hold our decolonization events earlier in the academic year, ideally before assignments, to improve engagement.
For the students who were unable to attend our discussion meeting events, we were able to conduct a survey as a quick alternative to introduce more ways the students could share their responses. Towards the end of April, a questionnaire was shared asking students questions relating to the lack of diversity and how that affects them. And by May 13th, we were able to receive over 70 responses, which provided a lot of helpful data from a number of students from different academic departments. For instance, we were able to know that 27.8% of the students believe that the library does offer a diverse range of inclusive resources, whereas 8.65% don't think that the resources are diverse.
So as it's one of the educational aims of the project to help students to understand decolonization in the context of the library, we decided to create an explainer video which breaks down the concept of the project and addresses common misconceptions, as well as it also states how students can get involved. The video is an animation that only lasts around 2 minutes and has worked really well for our engagement. We'll now display the video so that you can see an example of what we've been getting up to. A question that's often asked is, what does it mean to decolonize the library?
So here's a video to explain what that means.
First, let's start with a definition. To decolonize something is to identify, challenge, and revise or replace assumptions, ideas, values, and practices that reflect a colonizer's dominating influence, and especially a Eurocentric dominating influence. But why does decolonisation matter to the library?
Decolonising the library encourages students and staff to challenge unconscious biases that have been formed by a fixation on Eurocentric perspectives, narratives, and knowledge systems. Put simply, if most of the resources in the library are based on Western perspectives, the process of decolonisation would add more texts with perspectives from countries and cultures around the world to widen our depth of knowledge in that particular subject. This would result in increased diversity and inclusion in the library's collections to reflect the university's diverse student body.
And despite common misconceptions, this does not mean that we will be removing texts by white male authors or excluding Eurocentric or Western or European resources and perspectives from the library. It instead means that we will simply be adding more resources to widen the pool of knowledge in the library collections to include more diverse streams of thought. So what will the process of decolonisation look like? And can you get involved? Of course you can.
As student champions, Daniella and Cecilia will be working alongside students
and reviewing the library collections based on their feedback.
Then we will be adding more diverse resources to the library's collections. To get involved, you can fill out our survey and suggest authors or resources that you would like to see more of within the library. You could also attend our events where you can share your thoughts on the matter, and you can request to sign up to our mailing list via the email below.
And if you still have any questions or reservations about this, do feel free to contact us via email at libdeco@essex.ac.uk.
Thank you for listening. We hope to hear from you soon. Yeah. Okay, so are we unmuted? No. Yeah. Okay, so since the library has a large student body, we ensure to use several outlets to engage with the students. Occasionally, we had meetings with members from the student union, and these meetings were very beneficial since we were able to gain insightful tips on how to organize events and which social media platforms to rely on the most. A large portion of our advertisement took place via the library's Instagram account. This is because a lot of societies, as well as departmental accounts, were able to share our posts to their student followers. Furthermore, we were able to engage with this project through messages sent through departmental emails. Other communication channels included banners displayed on the library's websites, student interest groups, communication platforms such as EMR, the library's Twitter account, as well as posters and flyers. Next slide, please.
Thank you. As we are nearing the end of our time as student champions on this project, we're currently in the process of suggesting and ordering new diverse resources to the library. We have done this by selecting 4 subjects based on the feedback from our events and campaigns to focus our search on alongside our 25 student volunteers. The subject areas are Black British Literature and South Asian Literature for the Department of Literature, Film and Theatre, International Relations Theory for the university's Government Department, and International Human Rights for the Department of Law. For our volunteers, we had orientation sessions to guide them on how to begin their research so far, and they've begun to give us amazing suggestions of resources to add to the library collections. And if these resources meet the library standards, they will soon be bought and added to the collection. The volunteers so far have shown real enthusiasm for this project, which has been very encouraging. And our next plan is to produce a guide for students to research decolonial perspectives, and lastly, report on the project and share it with the student body and staff. Next slide.
Overall, we hope to make a significant change through this experience. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to us. we can now use this opportunity to listen to any comments or questions that anyone has.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Your video is amazing, and you have had so many positive comments in the chat. I am seriously worried, unfortunately, that we are running out of time and we're going to get cut off. So I wanted to say that as quickly as possible. You two, particularly Daniella and Cecilia, were massively impressive, and everybody is really taken aback by how engaged you are in the activities at Essex. I'm just going to quickly look at the chat. We have one question to the team at Essex, as well as all the positive comments. Did you get any pushback from staff or students resistant to the project, and how did you overcome that? That's to any of you at Essex.
Yeah, we had an email to our shared mailbox from one of the students, and they sort of saw it as like positive discrimination. So I think they sort of thought that we were going to remove particular texts, like European texts or texts from people from particular ethnicities, which wasn't the case. But they had a very lengthy email to say. So I very kindly responded to them and just let the person know, you know, that's not our intention at all, and just sort of outlined what our intentions are. But I think naturally there's going to be people that might not be happy with what we're doing. So the main thing is just like pushing forward, you know, what our plans are and sharing things like that video.
Yeah, well, I think your video addresses that question really well, actually, and that's why I think when people have seen it, were so struck, the audience, by what a good video that is to get that message across. We've got another question from Ruby Heale. Again, great presentation and video on decolonisation. Have you managed to get academics involved with this in terms of how they compile their reading lists?
Yeah, to varying extents, I think, both across departments and within departments. I mean, you know, a lot of lecturers are really on it and have made a lot of efforts to decolonise their lists. Others, you know, I think are still unsure really what decolonisation is even, or how it applies to their particular subject area. But, you know, generally, I think we've had positive engagement with departments on this, and we've been able to, you know, work with them on it. It's obviously an ongoing thing. I don't know what I would have to say on that, but
yeah, I think there are some comments on not negative, but pushback. But it's also an opportunity for us to engage the conversation. I mean, there are lots of indifferent people, but those people are at least engaged on the topic. So I will take that as a positive. And the reading list wise, yes, there are lots of initiatives within the university working on the decolonising their reading list as well. And that will be our hopefully next priority next academic year.
Excellent. We're going to have to come to an end there. So apologies if I haven't been able to ask all of the questions. There'll be opportunity, of course, to go into the lounge and ask questions and carry on the discussion there. And you can send direct messages to any of the delegates. So if you do have questions, you can do that. Just one little plug. At 5 o'clock, we have our quiz with our quizmaster, John, who will be asking many tricky non-library related questions. So do go along to that if you're interested in that. And of course, tomorrow we have our keynote from Josh Sendell, which will be really interesting talk that you don't want to miss. So thank you to everybody that has come along to this session to present. It's been